welcome back to another episode of the Sales Book Club podcast. I'm Daniel Locke. I'm joined by Matt, Zach, and Ryan. This week we're going to be reviewing Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Kind of let the guys go around brief introductions just so anybody is listening can kind of get to know who's who. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Daniel, man. Appreciate you hosting this week. This is going to be a great episode, man. This is probably, and right up there with the Bible. This is one of my favorite books.
Whoa, all right.
Yeah. So no, this is a great book, and reading it this time from a sales perspective, it's going to be awesome. I've been in sales for about 17 years in the shipping logistics industry, and honored to be here today to have this discussion. Pass it over to Ryan.
Yeah, I'm excited about this book too. Shockingly enough, I'd never read it before now, even though I've heard it many times. I've seen the Simon Sinek YouTube and everything else, or TED Talk. But I'm excited about talking about this. I think that, for me personally, culture and the why behind what we do things is very important just in my own personal life. And so it's nice to see that codified, as well as I think we're just going to have a great discussion. Again, my name is Ryan Pugh. I've been in tech sales now for about 8 years, sales overall for about 10, unless you count Christmas tree selling when I was 14. But nonetheless, I'm very excited about this. I think it's very applicable. So off to you, Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So I love the book too, Matt. I think it's great. It couldn't be more timely for me, kind of what I'm going through personally, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But I'm very excited to discuss with you guys, get some thoughts from what you guys had, and really excited to see where it goes, a couple weeks, a month, even a year from now, from the knowledge I've gained from this.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Daniel Locke. I work in industrial air pollution control equipment, and I'll kind of jump right in. Part of the reason why I'm in the market that I'm in is I really enjoy kind of trying to help the environment, and an aspect of that, it kind of comes back down to why, right? That's what I want to do, is I want to have impact and make change there. And so I've read it once before, absolutely loved it. There's some follow-up books that are kind of like workbooks that come along with this. With this book, what's great is you can kind of have it's that crash course, like you mentioned, Ryan, on the TED Talk. I think it really captures the bulk of this book, but I would say that if you were only just to listen to the TED Talk, there's so many just very, very specific examples that he obviously doesn't have time to get through in a TED Talk. And I've got, I don't know, I think my highlighter started wearing out at one point.
Clearly you have a lot of sticky notes there, man. How many sticky notes you have on that book, Daniel?
I don't have that. I actually don't have that many. I've got some more on some other books that we read back here, but
I'm more like a BC student, so seeing that, it's impressive. So
we want to read it again.
If I just take the highlights out and put them on like a sheet of paper, and it'll summarize it pretty well. But what I think the part about this book is it's not overtly explicitly a sales book, right? This kind of captures a lot of different things, and for being a leader, and obviously being, I know I have that perspective. I think you guys share it as well, that, if you're going to be a successful salesperson, you are leading your clients somewhere. And so, if you're in sales, you really are a leader of some sort. So it does apply. However, it may not be explicitly a sales book, but there is a whole lot of sales specific content in this book. And I mean, I'll pass it to you guys, but the second chapter's, carrots and sticks. And it basically just goes down to talking about, how we price and try to influence behavior, which is, common sales tactics. But no, I would kind of go back around. Zach, what were kind of your overall just thoughts and ideas about the book?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned the second chapter there, the carrots and sticks, because when I was reading that, I was kind of like, where is he going with this? And then he brings it all full circle, if you will, when he talks about the golden circle in chapter 3. And I personally loved the book because there were so many real world examples. When we read Thrive by Meredith Elliott Powell, she talked a lot about real world examples. You know, she gave the example of Bush's baked beans and stuff like that. And so reading this, I just loved it because it was actual stuff you could go look up and read more about if you wanted to. So there were just a lot of great examples. He repeatedly uses Apple, and it made me think, their why is challenge the status quo in everything we do. And I was watching a commercial the other day by Apple, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen it as well. It's one where the Apple Watch calls 911 for this guy that was out riding his bike, like trail riding through the forest or something like that. It calls 911 for him because it thinks that he took a hard fall. It gives a GPS location within like a 40 meter radius. I mean, it just blew my mind that they were challenging the status quo of just something that can tell time. I mean, it was awesome. And I thought back to this here as we read that. I don't know. Have you guys seen that commercial?
Oh, it's
I haven't seen the
fantastic.
commercial, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. And with what you guys have said so far about this book, it's not a sales how-to book,
Right.
but it is a sales motivation book, if anything. And I think reading it from a sales perspective, which I did this time, the last time I didn't, knowing that we were going to review it in this podcast, trying to think from a sales perspective, it really is it's almost like the fuel in your gas tank, honestly. I love what he said.
Very well said.
Yeah, I love what he said in the introduction on page 7. He says, this book is not designed to tell you what to do. It doesn't matter what you do or how to do it. Its goal is not to give you a course of action. Its goal is to offer you the cause of action. I think when you understand your cause and your why, then it motivates you and serves as a catalyst to invest at whatever you do, be it sales or whatever. What do you think, Ryan?
I would agree. There's been times when I've been doing something I didn't really have a why. And what it ended up doing for me was the outcome didn't matter because I didn't have a why. Perfect example. School. I have a love-hate relationship with it. But if I don't keep that why, because I'm in grad school, as some of you guys may know, if I don't keep that why in the forefront of my mind, at the end of the day, if I don't get a degree, my MBA, probably doesn't negatively impact my life per se. I'm already doing pretty well, but it does enhance my life if I keep it going. So I found that you can apply like that root cause of why to any number of things. And at the end of the day, I think sales is just an extension of who we are, right? We're there to provide a solution or an outcome for our clients, and we just happen to be the face of our company. So I don't see how this fits right in, I guess, with all these other sales books, even if it's not a sales explicit book, if that makes sense.
I think you make a great point, Ryan. When I was first reading it, there's like we both all said, there's no I'll say define like, hey, this is only for salespeople. Mm-hmm. But like you said, Matt, I think it was Matt said, as salespeople, we are the leaders of the company to a certain extent, and it's definitely it.
Oh, we lost him.
I think we lost Zach. What he was saying was good. I love this quote. Going back to that carrots and sticks chapter, man. Page 17, when companies or organizations do not have a clear sense of their customers are their customers, they tend to rely on the disproportionate manipulations to get what they need. Tell me that's not a sales say, but yeah, that hit home right there.
When I was in the Marine Corps, it was all sticks, no carrots. So
yeah, I would agree. The first, that first page and a half of that chapter, I mean, I got a big section there highlighted. It's like, the second paragraph, if you ask most businesses why their customers are their customers, most will tell you it's because of superior quality, features, price, service. In other words, they have no idea why. And, if companies don't know why their customers are their customers, odds are they don't know why their employees are their employees either. And kind of foreshadowing a few other instances in the book. I know we talked briefly, Apple did was mentioned a lot. So it was Southwest. Southwest Airlines he mentioned them several times throughout there. And Southwest puts their employees first, and even makes a comment and later on in one of the chapters that, it's the customer is not always right. The employee is right, and the employees will then therefore take care of the customers. And so I just thought that was a really good way to put it. And it's like, hey, if we empower our people in the right way to grow, and allow them the guidelines, in which to operate, then they're going to go forth and work on our behalf. And that just comes back down to, like I said, kind of everything circles back to the why. One of probably my favorite parts of the entire book is in the second chapter, third chapter. And he talks about the golden circle and kind of why is at the center. But a really great example that he mentions is, people get Harley Davidson tattoos on their bodies. You want to talk about supporting a brand? They're literally putting, a company's logo on their skin permanently. It's like, and why do they do that? Well, it's because those people identify with, what Harley Davidson stands for. They make motorcycles. And if you talk to most people that have ever ridden one, Harleys fall apart and they need a lot of work, but people still go buy them over competitors just because they identify with the shared beliefs, the same culture as the company. And that's a huge connection point.
Couldn't you argue that it's really these top tier brands that we think about, it's really the culture that is driving their success versus per se their product. So, Zach, you brought up a great point earlier about the Apple Watch. I love Apple products. Probably shouldn't say that as a Microsoft employee, but I do.
Edit.
But what I'm getting at is, the Apple Watch, I happen to have a new one too. If I just looked at the features and functionality, Google probably has a similar watch, or maybe Garmin, for example. But it's that ad where it talks about, well, what impact do all these features and functionalities have? What is the desired outcome? And Zach, you brought up a great point earlier with, a guy falls, he can't notify anybody. The watch does it for him. And to me, that kind of brings home what it is. And then that creates that culture versus just somebody going out and rattling off, the pricing and features and functionality. I think another, not to take too long to talk about this, but another good example is Subaru. If you ever watch a Subaru commercial, they never mention pricing. They don't ever talk about what specials they're running. Usually it's just a picture of like a dog and some lady like getting groceries, right? But like it evokes.
Right. It's about a lifestyle.
It is. And I've owned Subarus. I bought it for that reason. I love them. But you never once are like going in like, oh, is it, $200 cheaper this month than last month? That's not how they market themselves at all.
That's right.
Yeah. So one thing that I thought was really connects well with sales, was in this third chapter. It kind of talks about on that golden circle, you have the why, how, and what. And so many, I'll say entry level salespeople, without that lack of confidence or with that lack of confidence, or they're not really sure why they're doing what they do, they end up leaning on, okay, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And those are those things that most people do. How like this, how, whether you call them a differentiating value proposition or unique selling proposition, it just it doesn't really get back to the center of it is of why. It's just, I wouldn't say fluff, but it doesn't give people that connection that they need. And kind of in a sale again with the sales context is, you have to have those deep, meaningful conversations and understand other people, like, and what's driving their behavior, what they're connected with. If you just, like you said, Ryan, if you just kind of lean on just features and benefits, then at the end of the day, you put them side by side and compare the price at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't move the needle for really anybody. I thought that fair. But I think you said that sets up everything else downstream, like it says, as a sales book really, really well.
As I was thinking about this, and we meet every so often, of course, but have we ever talked about what our why is for why we're in this industry? I mean, we've talked about the why behind the spirit of the podcast, right? We're just sales guys. We live this life. This is how we make our living with sales. Why not highlight some books that other salespeople could benefit from? But have we talked about the why of why we're even into sales? I don't know if we have.
I don't think so. I mentioned it.
Why we're in the sales in the industry that we're in.
Yeah.
I don't think we have.
I don't know if we
I mentioned it early, a little earlier. Yeah, like, kind of rehash it again. What I care about the environment, and selling, air pollution control systems it's for me it's minor, but at the end of the day, I feel like if I can have some kind of incremental impact in, the quality of our air or, climate change, then, I have a small part to play in that. That's why I enjoy what I do.
Makes sense.
What about you, Matt?
It's a great question. My why is not what I do. What I do fuels my why. My why is to provide for my family and create legacy. The industry that I sell in, been in it long enough that it takes a little time because we are highly commoditized. We're probably the most commoditized industry. So bringing that why to the table really quickly become the value differentiator, especially as you're trying to create culture, which is and so
Matt, unfortunately, we're losing you a little bit. Your mic's going in and out.
Sorry, I'll skip to you, Zach. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. As we have talked about, your story from New Sales Simplified, and then we read this one, this book here by Simon. We talk about what's your why. I'm still in the process of trying to figure out exactly what mine is.
It's your wife, remember, Zach? Your wife.
Yeah, right. So, I wanted to say going to sales because of control over your income you have, but as we learned throughout reading that and even watching the TED Talk, that's a result of what you do. And I really think at the core, it's helping people. I truly enjoy that, get great fulfillment and joy out of that. It's so funny as I sit here and talk about what it is. I think back to the book where he talks about it's the part of your brain that you can't put into words because it's just a feeling. And so for me, it's really hard to describe exactly why I'm in sales, and I'm in the process of trying to get that I'll say articulated and down on paper. It just happens to be that I sell solar right now. When I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, it was helping people get place to place. When I worked at DeKalb, it was helping them come up with the best injection or the best plastic manufacturing process, whether that happened to be injection molding or not, was to be determined. So, I talked with another guy the other day about, your story and your why and what you do, and it can translate to really any career, really, and it's how you do it and then what you do with that, just as I've done, and only the 3 jobs that I've had. But yeah, it's a work in progress to at least articulate and get some words down.
Yeah, I would agree. For me, my root why, of course, is, I have a family. I want to make sure that I'm providing for them and able to give them a life that I think that they deserve. But why sales specifically? Part of it is just plain old ADHD. I can't do the same thing all day, every day. but
Yeah.
but also a lot of it has at the root cause of it. I will say this: I've met salespeople who you can tell are only in it for the money. I don't want to spend any time with those people. I don't learn anything from them. I find it just I don't enjoy it. I've been very critical of them to their face. I don't hold back. But but
How do you feel, Ron?
I'll let you know how I feel. Money motivated, which I love money. All right. I won't say I don't, but at the end of the day, I'm here to help clients. I'm here to help them achieve outcomes that couldn't have been done on their own. And, for example, I'm in technology. There's a lot of other vendors that sell a similar product or might have a similar outcome. And so a lot of times it does come down to who is the salesperson that's engaged with them. Are they providing value? Are they a trusted advisor and so on that we talked about before in other podcasts? So sometimes we are the differentiator. And I've just always wanted to have the opportunity to be in the forefront. And so that probably fuels my why. And I'm always excited to wake up and go out to work. I go upstairs to work. So
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Good.
So kind of, and this is where what I love about this book is that it applies in so many different ways, even outside of sales. Kind of what drives you. Chapter 5, clarity, discipline, and consistency. This one chapter alone, I think, can be its own separate book.
Yeah.
Just going into the depth of driving what it is that you find valuable, right, as a person, and value. I think I shared this maybe on LinkedIn, but in my version of value, it's subjective to whoever it is that's receiving it, right? What I absolutely love this in the book. He goes, we remind ourselves our values by writing them on the wall. Oftentimes you see them as nouns, but values or guiding principles to truly be effective, they need to be verbs. And I kind of agree with that. It's really hard to articulate that though, and start to make that change. I know, like kind of Zach, as you were saying, like I don't know if I can clearly do that right now, and it really kind of gets me thinking on just what kind of articulating what those values mean to me, let alone in the context of the selling role and someone in the opposite of you that you're trying to uncover what they find valuable. That makes it really, you have to do a lot of introspection, right, to be able to help others get to that point. Like I said, that you could just keep going in this chapter on trying to help. It almost starts to become like, I guess, self-help ish in that kind of wheelhouse of like, to help others, you got to understand yourself first.
Yeah, I agree. And we going back to that golden circle where it talks about why at the middle and then how you're going to achieve it, and then of course what you're doing. It's interesting because I had an experience where I was at one company for a while where we had a why behind what our product did, and we were eventually acquired by private equity. It was a good move, but when the new leadership came in, there was no clearly defined why, and we kind of drifted as a company. And sure, we're still making money. Everybody was happy, but I do remember about a year in after that transition, people started questioning leadership about, well, why are we doing what we're doing? And a lot of it had to do with like feature requests, or are we talking to our customers to find out what they really need? Like what are we doing here other than making money? And a lot of talent actually started leaving the company as a result, because even though it wasn't like there wasn't a toxic work environment or anything like that, I think people just weren't getting fulfillment out of it. And I think we spend so much time at work, shouldn't we feel fulfilled by what we're doing, regardless of what that happens to be? So
you make a great point, Ryan, because and I agree with you too, Daniel. I think chapter 5 is probably my favorite chapter. You could write a whole book on the clarity, discipline, and consistency. But Ryan, I think what happened at that sounds like is, when Simon starts talking in chapter 11 about when your why goes fuzzy, You know, there wasn't clear, you know, back to 5 here, there wasn't clarity, and it sounds like there wasn't consistency. And when that happens, I think the next chapter, Simon then talks about the split that happens, right? Like you had the why, and then you start to just, and for those of you listening or watching, the split that Simon talks about is when your why and your what start to taper off. Your what will continue to go up if you're looking at a graph, and then the why just kind of tapers off and becomes a plateau. And it sounds like exactly what happened to your company.
Yeah, absolutely. I just found it interesting. For me, it was a learning opportunity. When I was in that moment, I wasn't too happy about it, but as I reflected on it, you know, post leaving and then reading this book, it gave me some clarity. So I found it interesting.
How have you found companies be effective in communicating their why?
You know, sometimes it can come down as simple as living their values that they state. You know, for example, I work at a large company now. I mean, Microsoft has like 120,000 employees, maybe more, maybe 180. Can't quite remember. But, you know, the mission statement of Microsoft is to empower everyone and everything to basically live out its best version of itself. I totally butchered that tagline. So if they're watching, but at the end of the day, they want to create products and services that help you live a better life. And so when I look at that, that's actually how we approach, you know, new product releases, new services that we deploy. We always look at it from that frame of reference of, is this enhancing people's lives? And I find that to be a noble endeavor, right? Obviously, you're making a ton of money, you know, great, but at the end of the day, they stick to that root cause. So I think that's one simple way of doing it, just being consistent. We were talking about chapter 5, and it's not about integrity, right? It's about just doing the right thing. That's what also Simon says in one of the chapters. So I think that's kind of a simple example if I was to give one.
Good. That's a good example.
You know, the one part that I want to make sure I at least said today was that, you know, Matt, you talked about a company's why and stuff like that. I thought it was very interesting. It was in chapter 6. Simon gave the example of when you're hiring someone. I'm thinking any job post that's out there. It's all about what they do. This is what we do. Maybe you might get how they do it. I don't know if I've ever read a job description that says why we do what we do. I mean, it blew my mind. It was just such a paradigm shift of, man, if you wrote a job description all about why, and then maybe sprinkle in a little bit of what you do, I just feel like people would be all over that if that aligned with what they do. You know, he gave the example of the people going on that trip to Antarctica, and miraculously none of them died. And if you're listening, you can go through and read that. It's in chapter 6 somewhere. But it's just a total paradigm shift of, you know, it got me thinking, what if people created resumes that way? What if there was jobs that way? What if, you know, X, Y, and Z, if everyone just started with why? I mean, as simple as that sounds.
That's a really good point. I mean,
we got a new business idea, folks. Zach said,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, your resume was just, here's why I like to do. I just happen to have done it at this company, this company, this company, this company. I mean, it'd be different. And I'm sure you'd be, you know, the first part that some people may look at that and just, you know, move on from it because it's not the traditional, if you will, way of making a resume. But if you got someone who understood this golden circle to look at that, I mean, why wouldn't you want to hire someone?
That's good.
But,
you know,
just my take.
No, that's insightful right there, Zach.
That is.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Simon writes in here, great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hire already motivated people and inspire them. And I was like, you know, that is absolutely true. Is, you know, good people go to work for good companies, and, you know, and they rise together, right? A lot of these companies that grow at rapid rates, you know, it's not all the company, it's not all the people. There's a link between both the people working there and then whatever that solution is. Kind of, and to that next point though is, you know, it's not the leader. it's the role of the leader is not to come up with great ideas. The role of the leader is to create an environment in which great ideas can happen. And I thought that was just, you wish you could just go give that to anybody that's out, managing other people, and just say, look, give them the opportunity to go succeed. Instead of, it's kind of like the opposite of micromanagement, right? And I thought those are just two really, really great quotes in that chapter on trust. It was
that is a great example, and it goes back to what you said earlier, Daniel, that you're hiring motivated people to be inspired. So why would you then also need to be the only one, if you're the leader, that can come up with great ideas? You should expect that there's going to be an abundance of great ideas amongst your team. So yeah, that's a great context there.
Yeah, and along the same line, the same chapter, unless you give motivated people something to believe in, something bigger than themselves, a job to work toward, they'll motivate themselves to find a new job, and you'll be stuck with whoever's left.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah, exactly. Those motivated people they're going to find something to motivate themselves.
Right.
And if it's not coming from you, they'll seek it elsewhere. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and we were talking about via text message, I think over the weekend, where sometimes we struggle. Like, we're in a place in life, we think maybe there's more potential elsewhere, or maybe we haven't maximized our potential. And so it's definitely a journey that we're on. Not every moment or not every role is like probably the best that we could have ever been. But it kind of goes back to, if you remain motivated, you keep that why kind of in the forefront, you're gonna put yourself in situations where you're gonna be successful eventually. It might not just be today. So
yeah, alignment's really important, both and with what you do and who you do it with. I think that's a really a kind of a common genesis across, I think, the entire book is no one company is going to be able to succeed just because of a single person. Right. As everything keeps growing, you have to have people around you. How do you build people around you? And then kind of this goes back to just at a very, very generic level, just leadership. And how do you lead and inspire others? And he uses a really, really great example. Ryan, you probably appreciated this of Air Force general. And I thought that one was great. It was just, she was such a just servant leader in that example. And her rise through the ranks all the way up to, I think she got to like brigadier.
Yeah, brigadier
general. Yeah. And it was entirely, her entire mantra is, how do I support the lieutenants?
Right.
Is how do I support them and put them into positions where they can succeed? No, there's no personal outcome for her. Her personal outcome is making the military a better place than she found it. I thought that was just so, if living by those ideals, it gets hard sometimes, and you have to have that. It goes back to discipline to always stay true to both yourself and what you find valuable. But that model for success is there, almost in contrast to the way a lot of other people grow. But it's so much more powerful when you build it the right way.
Yeah, I would agree. You know what I like about this book too is it's consistent with other books I've read. So a book I read actually this past year was 48 Laws of Power. And it kind of highlights how power can be used, however you want, good or bad. But one of the aspects they talk about in power in that book is that if you want something, whatever it happens to be, a lot of times if you go ask for it, or you're like, if you go to a group of people, let's say you need $10,000, they're rarely going to give it to you, because what are you giving back in return, right? But if you go and you just invest in people, if you help them out, when you go to a networking event, you're not there asking people for jobs, but you're there to, hey, what is it you do? How can I help you? You're just there to kind of be a giver. A lot of times you end up getting what you want, right? I mean, I think it goes back to even us coming together. We started chit-chatting one day about what it was we wanted, and now we have a podcast. So none of us started the conversation with, hey, do you want to start a podcast? I mean, I'd be like, no, I don't even know who you are. So,
I think you make a great point though, Ryan, because you mentioned earlier the why we started this was really just to help other people.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, this would be great to get together and talk. But if we could help more people in our profession by saying, hey, read this, don't read this, go to page 43, like it's really just to help people. And then, oh, by the way, we get to learn from each other too. That's a side effect. That's a what that we get to do, right? So great point.
Yeah, we don't have any merch that we're selling. So.
Yeah, right. We're not out to get rich on
No
this.
merch, no sponsors.
No.
Still looking for that first sponsor. If anybody's listening and wants to sponsor.
No,
Shameless plug right there, right?
yeah, exactly.
Microsoft sponsor us, Ron. That'd be really cool.
Oh, I'm sure they
Boy,
would.
wouldn't that be something?
They may. Who knows? I don't know. It looks like Point Logistics is sponsor us based off.
Yeah, no.
For all your shipping needs. One call does it all. Call Saul.
That's not a lawyer.
That's great, man. That's great.
Word smart. Oh, that's hilarious.
So I'll kind of change a little bit, and this is something where my imagination started to kind of run. I'm going to say wild, but it started to shift a little bit when he gets to chapter 7 and talks about tipping points. I wouldn't call it quite a tangent on from the book, but it was a little bit off theme. He connects it back then at the end of the chapter, but the first part of that chapter, what I thought was great from a sales perspective, was he mentions in here, it kind of gives the a tribute to Malcolm Gladwell and Tipping Point and everything. And that's another great book that again we could discuss that later on. But I thought it was awesome. He starts talking about like the laggards. You have your innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then the laggards there at the very end. And I love this one. He's comparing a few of these different sections, and he's talking about the laggards. And he says his clients, they're the ones whom, no matter how hard you work, it's never enough. It usually boils down to price with them, and they're rarely loyal. And that's where that loyalty thing, and which I love connecting this back with sales is, we all know those kind of clients that they exist, and most of the time you just cannot figure out what their why is, or they don't have it clearly defined themselves. They're just there showing up and checking the boxes. And as a salesperson, how can you have a meaningful impact on improving their business or the rest of the realm of what you do if you can't figure out what drives them forward, what they find valuable? And typically when you've come across companies that just have that laggard mentality, yeah, their why is way off center from what their how and their what is. And frankly, most of the time they're bad customers that you don't want to do business with. And so he doesn't explicitly say it, but he does just kind of say, just don't even worry about them. Those are not the ones that they're not going to help you grow your business. And in terms of like of a tipping point, they're the last ones there. They're the last ones that are going to, support your business. And the loyalty pieces, he kind of connects a few more dots in loyalty in the next couple of pages. But, loyal clients, or loyalty is when people are willing to suffer some inconvenience or pay a premium to do business with you. Yeah. And we are, no matter how great of a company we are or any of us work for, there's things that the ball gets dropped here or there, or there's a miscommunication, somewhere in execution. There's mistakes happen. We're all human. We can set up these great ideals of how great we're going to solve their problems. But at the end of the day, if it was that easy, other people would do it. So how do you find those people that are loyal, that are going to stick with you through some of those minor inconveniences or whatever that may be? And because that's what's going to help you grow your business, but also have that impact.
Because I'm in technology, it's always evolving. There's always a new player on the scene, and sometimes there's a better tool out there, right? But sometimes when I have calls with customers or prospects, I tend to ask them what else they're doing completely outside of my realm. Like, what else are you guys investing in? What innovations or ideas are you guys working with? And I just I do it because I want to understand holistically how they're approaching things. I had a great customer at my last job, which they were on the forefront of technology. They were using some tools and things really outside the box. And as a result, they were an excellent customer with us, because if something was not working or if they had an idea for an enhancement, we knew that, hey, this was coming from a place of loyalty and basically trust, because we could see that they were doing that with other vendors as well. And I've had the flip side where people would just buy us to, satisfy some need. And at the end of the day, I've almost been lazy with them. I just give them a quote and call it a day, because it's like, if they go with us, great, but there's not really any conversation there.
What are some indicators of a company who might be operating?
So, sorry, indicators what?
Indicators of a company who's operating within their why. How do you know that a company is?
I think sometimes you just get the right person on the phone or in a meeting, and they start discussing. You can tell they have a higher level of emotional intelligence, for example. But sometimes too, it's just you hear what things they're doing in other parts of their business. Hey, maybe they're investing in people with on-site training. Maybe they're investing in new technology with some archaic accounting system, stuff that might be completely unrelated to what I'm selling. But you can see that they're investing in their people. They're looking at the future, and a lot of times that's a good indicator. It's not the only indicator, but it helps shape the conversation.
Yeah, I'd say typically you start to notice more of their themes, and through different conversations with different people. Is everybody sort of within the client side? Do they have that level of internal alignment?
Yeah.
Right. When there's a disconnect between what the actual objective is, when you talk across different groups on the buyer side, if they're all over the map, there's a good chance that their why is out of sync. Because otherwise, if it was in sync, they'd all be in the same conversation. And okay, I understand this is going to impact us, but this is going to have a benefit for the greater good of the company. And you see that occasionally in some clients, and it comes in different varying degrees. Sometimes it's really well aligned. And sometimes it's, it's like pulling teeth trying to figure it out. It's a book that we haven't talked about yet, but like Challenger Customers, another good book that kind of
the Challenger sale.
Challenger Customer.
Oh, I don't have that book.
It really goes well. It takes the Challenger sale and goes more of like, why is it so hard for companies to buy the right solution? It's not about the salesperson. It's about their internal struggles as a company. And because I feel like that's been oftentimes the hardest thing to navigate on for us as sellers is, hey, I just don't understand why you guys aren't communicating or connecting the dots internally. And that's always a big struggle. But
if I can interrupt you, one of the things that I do, or I think one of the indicators, and let me know if my mic starts, is you hear me?
Yeah.
Is how do they react when something goes wrong? It is one of the telltale signs of a company's why. Whenever we bring on a new account, I don't like for things to go wrong, but I like within the first 10 transactions, something to not go right. And we have to own it quick. We got to put plans in place to correct it. But how they respond to that will oftentimes reveal what their why is, what their culture is. So that's one of the indicators for me.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that is a great question you asked, Matt. How do you know other people's why? I think also too. I mean, I think everyone made a great point too. But I think for me, the first thing I thought of was, well, if their why is aligned with yours, you can pick up little subtle things very easily. That as soon as you said that, I instantly, I'm sure you guys have all heard about me talk about Dave Ramsey Solutions in the company, and I love it. I mean, they literally have.
I didn't put 20% down on my house. I'm sorry.
Ah, man, we'll work on it.
How's that debt snowball coming?
Yeah, right. But on the front of their building, I've been down there and I've seen the new building that they've built, and it's just amazing. But like right on the front, It literally says out front, someone's life will change today because you came to work. I mean, that now that's not their mission statement. Their mission statement's to the extent providing, providing biblically based hope and knowledge to in all walks of life. That's essentially what it is. But when you just have that same why of like, hey, trying to help, and could you imagine that being a why for some company is someone's life changed today because you came to work. I mean, you can't tell me those people that walk through those doors aren't like, hey, we're ready to kill it today and just be rock stars.
Agreed. And you're going to become our financial advisor as well, correct, Zach?
Yeah.
Something like that, right? Someday. You got to sell merch first.
Got to get a sponsor first.
Yeah, right.
We got to start with trucker hats. That seems to be, that's how it goes.
I have a question for you guys. How, when you feel like they're trying to uncover someone else's why, and we'll say like a sales discovery call, what are some of the questions that you guys might ask to try to help understand and where they're trying to come from? Like, I know, Ryan, you kind of mentioned you'll ask things that aren't necessarily directly related to the solutions that you guys provide, but is there any other, we'll say more broad-based questions that kind of help give some kind of alignment to where they're aligned on when it comes to values or what they find is, close to what your why is?
I think it's hard to do without doing proper discovery. If you
Yeah.
take the time to look them up on LinkedIn or social media and kind of figure out some things about them before you talk to them, then you can ask about their family, that will ultimately get you those questions. But
we lost
somebody else. Did we lose
You're in and out. Daniel, I'm in an executive MBA program at the University of Alabama, and we spend a lot of time together. We have team meetings, we go in person, we have dinner afterwards. There's a lot of time that I spend with these folks. And I just now started having that question about why and why they're doing what they're doing. And I've been with them now for over a year. And part of the reason I did is because I'm reading this book, right? What I found is it can be very awkward when you're asking why, or people don't know. Like, they haven't been approached with that question before. And so you have to ask it differently. Like, sometimes it comes out because people talk about their family or the kids, or, hey, I love hiking in the mountains, like something like that. Like, it sounds all trivial, but obviously there's a reason they're talking about it. So sometimes it's that, but I have found that you can't just come out and ask what their why is until you've established some decent amount of trust. Unless somebody else has insight that I would love to use.
I think you make a great point, Ryan. Sometimes it's tough, especially if people have never even heard of the concept of the golden circle.
Mm-hmm.
Because you may ask sometimes, why do you do that or whatever? And a lot of people may say the results of what they do, like, oh, well, to make a profit, oh, to provide a better life for all the employees or something like that, which could get to be close. But if they haven't even been, I'll say, exposed to this terminology, this thought process and all that, it's tough at times. It really is. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. It definitely takes time in building the relationship. And like he talked about in chapter 6 there, the emergence of trust, like getting to learn about them and everything. And then, in roundabout ways, asking those open-ended questions to get them to answer.
Yeah. So the reason I asked the question was, and this is something I completely agree with, and it was touched on a little bit in New Sales Simplified, but the goal of the business should not simply be to sell to anyone who wants what you have, the majority, but rather find the people who believe what you believe on the left side of the bell curve. And that's probably where it is hard to identify, because there's not that many people that fit the left side of that bell curve from chapter 7 that really understand it. And it's hard. It's like it's like going unicorn hunting. It's a challenge.
It is.
So I know we need to wrap up here. Obviously, I think all of us, I'll let you guys speak for yourselves. I think this is a fantastic book for a salesperson to read by far. I really think to go a little bit further from just a salesperson, anybody that's, during this great resignation is, everybody keeps reading about. I really think it's important for a lot of leaders to read this book as well, whether or not you're in sales or not, because I think it has the potential to impact the way you are approaching things with leading people right now, and particularly salespeople. But y'all go ahead.
I would agree wholeheartedly, Daniel. Like, out of the four of us, two work from home, right? And that's probably indicative of throughout the industry, right? A lot of people work remote now. It becomes a lot harder to justify the level of effort I'm doing at work when I feel completely disassociated with where I receive my paycheck and the company I work for. It's funny. I actually keep a name badge. There's a bookcase right above me. It shows that I work for Microsoft, and I kind of have to do that to remind myself, because at the end of the day, I'm just sitting here in my office. The only difference from my last job to this one is I got a different computer, so stay in the same place. And it's a little bizarre, but at the end of the day, I do have relationships that I form with people that I work with, and we talk about the whys and our motivations, and that's really what keeps me fueled. Because you mentioned, Daniel, that great resignation. I was part of it. The last company I worked with was the one that was kind of drifting on the vision, and at the end of the day, the money wasn't enough for me. So I think that's a very good point that you raised, Daniel.
Yeah, I think people who understand their why kind of flock together, and I really think we said this earlier. It's really the common denominator of the four of us. In a sea of sales professionals, we found each other. This whole thing started. So I think understanding your why is so much greater than your career or what you do. It really is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So why in the world would you not read this book? If you get up and spend the majority of your day working, wouldn't you want to know your why and want that to be what fuels you to do what you do? So absolutely, every person should read this. Salespeople.
Yeah. To wrap it up, fellas, I would agree with everything you guys said. I mean, it's just when you know your why, you've got I'll say your true north, if you will. You know where you're going, and you just, hey, should I do this or should I not? Okay, well, does this align with the why that I'm working on or that I believe? And not only salespeople, I'd recommend this to really anyone. Like you said, it just gives yourself more meaningful purpose, if you will. But yeah, overall, I think we all just thought it was an amazing book, and can't wait to get more ideas down on paper on how to articulate really the why. So.
Yeah,
and redo your resume based off of a why instead of the what's.
Yeah,
Right,
we've already
right.
set up a shell company. It's called Zach's Resume Builder.
That's right.
I was doing that on the side while we're talking. So.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks, guys. Great episode.